iconic capsuleer and Damsna, the co-CEO of Sorry in Advance, an alliance in Wormhole. I'm also the co-host of the Gheinok Capsuleers Chronicle. It's a weekly YouTube show about Aves news every Tuesday on 2015 Eastern Time Zone. In the first episode, I've talked about the Amarr Empire. That's a vast technocracy supported by a broad foundation of slave labor, and in their mind, they are the chosen children of their one true God. So we're gonna get into their history, their political structure, their religion and culture, how it is to grow up into the Amarr Empire, their bloodlines, and finally some of their notable characters. It's gonna be around 5 episodes about them, so I hope you're gonna enjoy to dive into the Amarr Empire with me. Please keep in mind that I'm doing the podcast to improve my English, so I'm sorry in advance. The Amarr Empire is a rigidly stratified authoritarian imperial state ruled by the Amarr Emperor. It is both the oldest and the largest of the empires of New Eden. This vast technocratic society is supported by a broad foundation of slave labor, mostly drawn from people of Minmatar extraction, but also from several other nationalities subdued by the empire through its long history. Their own planet is the Amarr star system, was named Atra in ancient time, but was renamed Amarr Prime during the expansion into space. As a culture, Amarr adhered to the basic tenet that what others call slavery is in fact only one step on an endangered person's spiritual path toward fully embracing the Amarr faith. Amarr citizens tend to be fervent and industrious individuals, deeply convinced from an early age of the moral superiority of their religion and the legacy of their favor in God's eyes. A phenomenon that makes them quick to take whatever action they deem necessary in order to bring the unenlightened into the fold. In its efforts to enforce this view, the empire has for centuries engaged in a campaign known as the Reclaiming, a holy war against unbelievers. The unfortunate losers of this war have historically been enslaved by the empire. Nominally, this slavery is designed to work off the sins of the non-Amarr until the day they will be free to enter Amarr society as enlightened followers. In practice, however, the elders, the general name given to the slave-owning gentry, usually pay mere lip service to this traditional duty, then go on to brutally work their slaves to death for profit. Holders are privileged elites who control hundreds of thousands of lives each, given more or less free rein through rule commanders or wherever they see fit. Some are capricious tyrants, while others rule with temperance and justice. Due to their sweeping powers within their respective domain and the archaic bureaucracy they are entrenched in, the political interplay between orders is not so much a finely woven web as a tangle of thread, with rivalries, political marriage, and insidious double deals forming an impenetrable knot of interests and intrigues. History. Foundation. The oldest of all civilizations in New Eden, the Amarr trace their origins back to settlers on the planet of Atra thousands of years ago. Led by a prophet known as Gheinok I, they were driven from the continent of Asimia following the collapse of the Eve Gate, eventually settling on an island known as Amarr. There, they languished for centuries, as warlords waged bloody conflicts on each other and the church struggled to keep the faith alive. From these warlords rose the legendary first emperor, Amash-Akura. Amash-Akura conquered via sword and scripture, bringing the entire island under his command and founding the Amarr Empire in AD 6470. He codified laws, established the hereditary noble class of holders, and formed the religious body that would rule the empire, the Council of Apostles. The reclaiming. For nearly 4,000 years, the Amarr stagnated, unable and unwilling to venture beyond the confines of their island. This changed abruptly in AD 2022, when foreign ships belonging to the mercantile Dorian people landed. Though initially eager to trade, the Utarians brought with them ideals that threatened the Amarr way of life. The emperor ordered them enslaved and declared the beginning of the reclaiming, a holy war intended to make the entire world part of the empire. During the early stage of this war, the Amarr discovered a nomadic people who had long fought against the Utarians. Finding eager and willing to converse, the Amarr graced them with the name Canaan, meaning little lord or lordling, and employed them as shock troops and heavy infantry against the much larger but decimate Utarian states. One by one, the Utarian nations fell and were enslaved by the Amarr until AD 20,371, when the last holdout fell. The empire now covered Amarr Island and the continent of Asimia, Bes-Udor, and Kas-Udor. Eventually, they managed to travel across the Treacherous Sea to discover the continent of Cadiz, whose natives were powerless to stop the empire's inexorable march. In AD 20,544, the last independent nation of Atra fell to the empire. The victorious emperor renamed the planet Amarr in celebration of the conquest. Millions of slaves toiled under wealthy elders who worked them harshly while simultaneously offering them the salvation of God. Expansion into space. The Amarr dedicate these spoils of conquest to science, art, and philosophy. Eventually, they began to spread off their planet, starting in AD 20,572, when they first launched people into space. Followed, especially once the Amarr discovered microbial life on the ocean world of Tamira. They placed a permanent colony there in AD 20,725. In AD 21,134, the Amarr stumbled across the remains of a stargate. Though the ancient structure no longer functioned, they were able to reverse engineer it and construct a completely new stargate. In order to open it, they had to send a cryo ship filled with materials to construct a sister gate in the nearby star system of Edion. It reached its destination 53 years later. With a foreign sun lighting their progress, the awoken workers construct the stargate and send a signal back to Amarr. In AD 21,290, the gates flare to life. Internal Schism. The rediscovery of Stargate technology sent the Amarr expanding across their local cluster, but as they spread, their ability to control their populace weakened. Under these conditions, an ancient code known as the Sabik was re-established and allowed to proliferate. These blood worshippers had lurked in the shadows of Amarr religions for generations, always being stamped out, only to return decades later. This time, a group of them managed to evade imperial authorities and fled to the then distant constellation of Aras, where they found the short-lived kingdom known as Tamalk. Though the Tamalk themselves are no longer to be found and their fate remain unknown, they are believed by many to be the origin of the feared Blood Raiders organization of today. Additionally, there was the unfortunate case of Emperor Doriam II. While initially just and pious, Doriam slowly began to view himself as the living embodiment of God. He issued decree after decree that transferred power to him and transformed the state of religion into a cult centered around himself. At the height of his delusion, Doriam II ordered the construction of a city of God in the system of Sashta, where he could reside in seclusion from worldly distractions. As he entered his palace there for the first time, he was assassinated by his nephew, who came to be canonized as a Saint Tetrimon. It took the Council of Apostles years to purge Doriam's change, and indeed, some were never removed. First contact. In AD 21,423, the Amarr opened a stargate to the Edier system. There, they discovered primitive humans living on the 6 planets. Though the Amarr was shaken by the existence of humans living on another planet, the Emperor ordered them reclaimed. They were quickly enslaved, with minimal difficulty, replenishing a slave stock that had dwelling greatly over the previous 1,000 years. With the revelation that they were not alone in the universe, the Amarr were thrown into a frenzy of rapid expansion. The thirst for slaves has been rekindled among the elders, and they rapidly construct new stargates searching for slaves. This rush yielded very little. However, only a few small populations with now forgotten names, like Andonish and Jarkin, were discovered. moral reform. A new emperor, Doriam V, was crowned in AD 21,870. In those days, the emperor was still considered the first among equals on the Council of Apostles. Doriam V was ambitious and noticed a few of Zargram's change had never been undone. This tipped the balance of power in his favor, and he declared the start of the moral reform, designed to rewrite scripture to make the emperor the undisputed political and religious ruler of the empire. The Council of Apostles rebelled, but Doriam had allied himself with the 5 largest and most powerful order families. His own family was the noble and esteemed Khadr, who counts numerous emperors among their number. The Khadr was ambitious up-and-comers who had begun a rapid ascent. Religious fundamentalists, the Adi Shafir, had seen their fortune wane over the previous centuries, but were eager for a comeback. The militant Sarum family count some of the best generals among their ranks. Finally, the Khanid family, named after the people they were given dominion over, possessed the most elite troops in the empire. A bloody civil war tore the empire apart, leaving millions dead. It raged for decades, finally ending in AD 21,930, with Doriam and his force victorious. The 5 families who had allied with Doriam became the heir families, from whom future emperor would be chosen. Together with the emperor, they would form the Privy Council to govern the empire, while the Theology Council would oversee the scripture. The Ni-Kunni and Minmatar. Slave stocks were hit hard by the moral reforms and subsequent rebuilding effort. Fortunately for the empire, they discovered the Ni-Kunni in AD 22,103. Living on an arch-arid world, the Ni-Kunni viewed the Amarr as savior almost as much as conqueror. A mere 250 years later, the Amarr detect the first sign of another spacefaring race, the Minmatar. They conduct a few probing raids on the outskirts of Minmatar space before determining that this new race of people was greatly inferior to them technologically. In AD 22,480, Emperor Jamyl II ordered the full conquest of the Minmatar, while the Amarr Navy brutally destroyed defenses and infrastructure. 6 slave ships touched down on the inhabited planets in the Minmatar home system, Bator. 3 whole planets were depopulated, and 2 lost half their number, with only the home world, Matar, managing to put up significant resistance. At the end of the so-called Day of Darkness, hundreds of millions of Minmatar have been enslaved. The Amarr continued their assault on the Minmatar, assisted by collaborators in the Minmatar tribe, who came to be known later as Amatar. By AD 22,485, the empire had fully conquered the Minmatar people. However, small bands managed to escape and form a resistance that will prove a constant thorn in the empire's side. Unchallenged No Longer. The Amarr developed the jump drive in AD 23,058, allowing them to move large ships instantly from one system to the next without first constructing a stargate. The surge of expansion that followed quickly brought them into contact with additional spacefaring nations. In AD 23,180, they made first contact with the Galante Federation, a nation of democratic liberals to whom the Amarr technocracy and entrenched slavery was anathema. However, both nations proved too large and powerful to attack the other, and they settled into an uneasy truce. Shortly after, they encountered the Caldari state, who were locked into a bitter war with the Galante. Finally, they encountered the Jove in AD 23,191. Initial contact was limited, and the Amarr took this as a sign of weakness from the Jove. The Amarr, hungry for fresh slaves, believed the Jove were a soft target and announced their plan to invade. Amarr-Jove War. The Amarr sent a single squadron, numbering roughly 200 ships, to invade the Jove system of Vac-Atio. Confident the battle would be one side affair, the Amarr imagined quickly overrunning the panicked Jove and pressing them into bondage. Instead, it was the Jove who turned the battle into a massacre. Their small nimble frigates pinned down the lumbering Amarr battleship, while the massive doomsday weapons of the Jovian mothership cut swaths through Imperial forces. Battle doctrine compelled the Amarr to stay on the field until they were slaughtered to a man. Minmatart Rebeelion. Blooded but not beaten, the Amarr prepared a second strike on the Jove. At that moment, slaves across the Empire rose up in rebellion, backed by Minmatar freedom fighters, Galante sympathizers, and a small group of Jove agents. The Minmatar rebels were able to make swift gain before the Amarr could counterattack. The mass synchronized rebellion was something the Amarr had never envisioned. Millions of Amarr, holders and commoners alike, were slaughtered in the first few days. In the course of a few months, the Amarr were forced out of Minmatar space. Under the orders of Emperor Doriam II, the Amarr abandoned large tracts of territories to the rebels, who founded the Minmatart Republic. Reign of Doriam II. In YC 105, after 300-year rule, Doriam VII succumbed to the turret disease. The succession trials were held, with the heirs being represented for the first time by the newly emerged capsuleer class. Doriam Khazor, championed by the pilot Eclipticon, emerged victorious. Doriam II goes way within the Empire by interceding in arguments between the new heirs, and taking a stance of appeasement toward the Minmatart Republic. However, in YC 107, The Blood Raiders, an offshoot of the Sani-Sabic, began a reign of terror against the Empire, under the direction of the deranged Amarr-Akura. Dorian declared war on the Blood Raiders, and within a few short months, the Empire outspanned them from the beacon. The victory was short-lived, however, as Dorian was assassinated by unknown assassins on July 4th of that year. Karsoth Interregnum. The loss of two emperors with such a short period was nearly unprecedented in the Empire. The Sarum family had not yet even named a successor to the fiery Jamyl I. The other heirs, young and ambitious, were reluctant to begin the succession trials and put their own lives at risk. Instead, court chamberlain the Shuta Karsoth assumed power. Unbeknownst to many, the once pious Karsoth had grown twisted and cynical in his long years of service, giving himself fully to the corrupt Sani-Sabic faith. As elders battle each other in capricious war, Minmatar freedom fighters harass the Empire's lawless borders. And heirs such as Ari, Sikyo, Kors, Azoth engaged in tyranny, Karsoth watched with glee. Elder Invasion. The Stark Manor tribe had long been taught instinct following a genocide perpetrated by the Amash-Akura family. But in YC 110, a group was discovered alive on a remote slave colony. Karsoth secretly ordered their execution, while publicly assuaging the Minmatar. Before his assassin could strike, a fleet of rogue Minmatar under the legendary elders invaded. Throwing the Empire into confusion, they struck multiple slave colonies by deploying insurgents, the antidote to a drug called Gheinok, which was used to keep slaves under control. The suddenly free slave rose up in rebellion as the Minmatar navy was repeatedly driven back. Just when the Amash seemed poised to fall, Jamyl I returned from death to lead a counterattack. At the helm of a powerful superweapon of mysterious origin, she devastated the Elder fleet and sent it fleeing to the Republic. Reign of Jamyl I. Despite having committed suicide following her loss to Doriam II, Jamyl claimed to have been resurrected by God to be the savior of the Empire. Though the heirs knew she had been cloned, a great sin for Amarr here, all but Ni-Kunni and Minmatar bent their knee to her. Even he eventually grudgingly agreed to crown Jamyl Emperor. Under Jamyl's reign, the Empire has regained much of its previous glory. She made the reformed Architziokor Azor her imperial chancellor and tasked her rival, Gheinok Asdapur, with repairing the destruction wrought by the Elder fleet. In a calculated move, she freed millions of Minmatar slaves with a single decree, sending a surge of religious converts into the Republic, where they began to sow dissent. With the aid of the Gheinok kingdom, she captured and executed Karsoth, leading to a reconciliation with Gheinok II. She also oversaw the creation of the first clone soldiers as part of the Templar project. When they proved unstable, she abandoned the project and warned the other nations against it. Advised, none followed, to their own detriment. Today the Empire is perhaps the strongest nation in New Eden, with the largest population, most stable economy, and the greatest amount of territory. However, the Minmatar waged war against the Empire, while the heirs schemed for their own power. Thanks for listening, I hope you like it. Please hit the bell to be notified of my new content and leave a thumbs up. See you next week for a new episode to continue the series about the Amarr Empire. We will talk about their political structure, so why does it have emperor or heir? And what are their roles into the Amarr Empire? Why Jamyl committed suicide after a loss to Doriam II? I'm gonna answer all those questions for you. See you next week, Gheinok and friends!